Good morning. This is TroytlePower with the oh shoot, is our podcast for sure called Your Day, Week, Month, Year Reviews? I don't know. Anyway, this is TroytlePower. I'm here to talk to you about my first impressions of Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. First, a little bit of background. I'm a huge Zelda fan. Fan? I am a huge Zelda fan, but A Link to the Past has long been a gap in my gaming history. I played a bit of it about 8 years ago or so, but I have no memory of playing this one as a kid. I played a bunch of the original Legend of Zelda, and then got way into the Nintendo 64 games. Those were the first ones I can remember being aware of before they came out. Those are the first games I remember being hyped for, was Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. But A Link to the Past, I just don't have a nostalgic connection to. I played it on the Wii U, the Super Nintendo version on the Wii U a couple years ago, and then last night I started in earnest on a playthrough that I plan to finish, playing the Game Boy Advance version. I was actually playing the Game Boy Advance version through the GameCube Game Boy Advance player, and then I'm going to continue playing it on the Game Boy Micro. So just to kind of give you a little bit of background on where I am and how I'm playing the game. A Link to the Past came out in 1991, so this is a 27-year-old game, and I'm just now sitting down to play it with the intention to actually beat the game. Yeah, so let me tell you a little bit about the game to start out with. Link to the Past is a follow-up to Zelda 2, but really it's more of a follow-up to Zelda 1. The original Legend of Zelda had a top-down view. Zelda 2 did something a little bit different, and A Link to the Past is back to the top-down view, except for on the Super Nintendo, which means it's gorgeous as far as the colors go. Everything's really bright and colorful, and it's got a really nice style to the sprite work. So Link is a little bit of like a chunky sprite. I kind of like the character work. There's a lot of villagers that you meet, a lot of monsters, and everyone's got a lot of personality in their design, which is really nice. The gameplay is pretty much what you'd expect from a Zelda game. You wander around the world, you get a sword, you rescue a princess, and then you start going through dungeons where you have to solve puzzles to progress from room to room. In those dungeons, you tend to find keys and maps and compasses and items that help you get further in the game. I did play Link Between Worlds, which was a 3DS game that came out a few years ago that borrows very heavily from this game. I think it actually uses exactly the same overworld map, but I'm pretty sure the dungeon structure is different. If the dungeon structure is the same, I don't remember the dungeon structure well enough for that to be influencing this playthrough. Yeah, I'm really liking it. The overworld is really nice. I completed 3 dungeons yesterday. The start of the game has kind of 3 objectives that you have to hit before you can get the Master Sword, and I got all 3 of those done yesterday in my initial playthrough of it. And then the next step is you have to fight up a tower to this dark wizard that has kidnapped Zelda and using her to bust open a seal preventing evil from entering the world. And you fail. You get there just as he's completing the process of busting that open, so he actually succeeds, I think, in breaking the seal. And then you go into a boss fight with him. I died on that boss fight twice and decided to call it a night. So yeah, that's a little bit about the history of the game, my experiences with it, how I'm playing it. Now what I'd like to do is look at my list of questions here. So let's see. When are you recording is the first question. That's a good question. It is 6 in the morning for your boy Troidle. I was up super late last night playing this game, and then I woke up at 4:30 this morning and was just wide awake. So yeah, it's just the day after my first playthrough. It's not technically the same day, but I stopped playing at like 10:30, so I think I could be forgiven on that. This is a Nintendo game. I guess I didn't mention that earlier, but it's Zelda. You should know that by now. When and where did you first hear of this game? This is a weird one for me because, like I said, I was a huge Zelda fan growing up of both the original Nintendo game and the Nintendo 64 games, but this one, like, I have no memory of. I cannot figure out if that's just, like, me having a poor memory and we actually did have this game when I was a kid, or I mean, surely I must have been aware of its existence, but honestly, I cannot remember anything about it until like maybe the GameCube era. I know the GameCube had a release come out that was a Legend of Zelda collection, and I remember people being upset that this game wasn't included on that collection. So I think that's when I first started to become aware of it. But like I said, I never played it. I've owned it many times. I have the Game Boy Advance copy. I have a Wii copy on the Virtual Console and a Wii U copy on Virtual Console. I think I had the Super Nintendo game at some point when I was just buying random Super Nintendo games. I think this is one I sought out and purchased, but I never really played it. I wish I could explain why. I just never really did. What I like about the game, I really like that it is familiar as a Zelda game. Part of that is that, like I said, the overworld is the same as the Zelda game that I played recently on the 3DS, but just the basic progression of it feels really good. And in fact, I was surprised when I was playing yesterday to find out that the structure of the opening of Ocarina of Time is basically exactly the same as this, in that Ocarina of Time starts with you having to collect 3 special items from 3 dungeons and then getting the Master Sword. That's exactly what you do in this game, and from what I know about this game, just like in Ocarina of Time, the next thing that I'm going to do is get transported to a altered version of the world. I've actually seen that already a little bit in A Link to the Past. Before you get to the 3rd temple, you kind of preview the Dark World. But I'm pretty sure from what I've just kind of observed through cultural osmosis that the next thing that happens after the boss fight that I'm stuck on is that you actually get shifted semi-permanently into the Dark World, and the next several dungeons are completed there, just like how in Ocarina of Time, the next several dungeons are completed as Adult Link in the kind of post-apocalyptic world. What do I not like about the game? Man, I'm struggling to come up with what I don't like about it. There's a couple enemies that I think are kind of cheap. Actually, you know what? I guess the second dungeon didn't really thrill me. The second dungeon set in a desert, and I've got a particular thing against monsters that come out of the sand at me. Ever since the original Zelda, where there was the weird hourglass worms that would pop out of the sand at you, I have had a problem with that. And in a dungeon set in a desert, that happens a whole heck of a lot. So yeah, that might have been that was my least favorite thing about the game so far, but it wasn't poor design necessarily. There's a couple enemies that felt a little bit cheap, but mostly it's just that it freaks me out to have monsters jump out of the sand and attack me. So that's probably my least favorite thing about it so far. Let's see. Let me check my questions again here. Do you have a history with the game? Like I said, I'm a huge Legend of Zelda fan. I just recently played the original Legend of Zelda on NES, and I've actually played a little bit of Zelda 2 recently as well, which there'll probably be something from probably work about that in the near future, so keep an eye out. But this one it's just been a gap. I don't know. If you're reviewing an older title, what do you remember most about this game? Well, this is my first time really getting into it. What I remember from playing it before was when I got to the desert dungeon, the sand one that I was just talking about. There's a weird thing you have to do to get in there, and I think that's actually where I stopped playing when I played this before, because the twist to get into the dungeon, you find the entrance to the dungeon, but it's blocked, and there's a pedestal with some carving on it, but you can't read it because it's in an ancient Hylian language. It doesn't tell you can't read this, it's in an ancient Hylian language. It's just that when you look at the pedestal, it's like gibberish. And that's really frustrating. And when I was playing last night, I was streaming, and if I hadn't been streaming, I might have stopped playing at that point, because I was just kind of like, what the hell am I supposed to do here? Because I was streaming, I decided to just go wander around and explore some more, and ended up finding a library, saw a book on top of a shelf, and because I've played Link's Awakening on the Game Boy, I was like, oh man, I'm going to knock that book down. And it turns out that it was a dictionary, which let me decipher the text on the pedestal and open up the dungeon. So yeah, I remember getting stuck in that part before. I had like a very vivid memory when I walked up to it of like, oh, there's something weird here. But I don't know if that's from this game or if that was a memory from playing A Link Between Worlds, because I'm not sure if A Link Between Worlds does the same thing there. I don't know. Having played Link Between Worlds recently is making this an interesting playthrough, because they are very heavily similar, but I'm actually not looking up how similar they are, because I don't want to know. I want to be surprised, and if I'm afraid that if I look up how similar they are, I'm going to be reminded of things that I've more or less forgotten about from Link Between Worlds. Let's see. Are you excited to be playing this game in a week, a month, and or a year? I'm definitely excited to be playing this in the coming week. I'm a little bit excited about the prospect of playing it over the course of a month. In a year, I'm not going to be playing this game again. I'll tell you that now. Zelda games typically have maybe like 15 to 20 hour campaigns, I would say. I think that's about typical. Playing the original Legend of Zelda took me 3 days of streaming. Link to the Past, I'm anticipating I'm not going to be finished with a week just because we are coming up on the holidays. But I'm going to move from playing it on stream to playing it as part of my podcast, TroytlePower Presents, the Power Playthroughs podcast with TroytlePower. And I tend to play games a little bit slower on that because I kind of break them into like half-hour chunks. So that might make this take a little bit longer than it would otherwise, but I would guess that a month from now I'm going to be done playing this game. Having said that, I'm excited. I'm really excited to be playing through this one. I had a ton of fun playing through the original Legend of Zelda, and so far I'm having a ton of fun playing this game, and I'm really excited to see both the story develop, which, granted, in Zelda games is usually pretty generic, but it's usually pretty enjoyable too. But more, I'm excited to see the mechanics and the puzzles evolve as I go through the game, and find cool new dungeons with new music. Man, I love Zelda games. They're so good. They're so good. So the kind of final questions that I want here is, do you like this game so far, and would you recommend it to a friend? And you can probably tell from the rambling I've done so far, absolutely, emphatically, yes and yes. I'm really enjoying this game. It is a lot of fun. I think it's aged super well. I honestly think that A Link to the Past is probably aged better than Ocarina of Time. Ocarina of Time is an early 3D game, and that tends to be a tough thing to go back to unless you're bringing a whole heaping helping of nostalgia with you. Whereas being a 2D game, and really a late 2D game, Link to the Past feels great. The controls feel pretty dang good. There's a couple times where Link swung his sword in the wrong direction, but I think that's more on me than on him. And the graphics are just gorgeous. It's a very pretty game. Playing it on the Game Boy player, everything's a little bit fuzzy, to be fair, but I do remember from when I played it on the Wii U and I had the crisper version of these graphics that it just looks really nice. It's a very pretty game. I really love the art style. That's something that's like right at the top for me of pros on this game. But yeah, I would absolutely recommend it. If you've never played this game before, this is totally one that's worth going back to. Obviously, it's kind of silly for me to be saying that since this is considered like one of the classic video games. But yeah, I'm sure there's somebody out there who missed this game as well, just like I did, and I would say absolutely go pick it up. You can get it on Wii or Wii U. Well, I guess the Wii eShop's weird now, but you can get it on Wii U. If you've got one of the new 3DSs, I believe you can even get it on there. Or you can go find a Game Boy Advance copy. They exist. But yeah, it's totally a fun game, and I would definitely recommend picking it up. And if you played it before, but you haven't played it in a long while, especially if you haven't played any of the 2D Zelda games in a while, I would definitely recommend trying it out again. It's a lot of fun. I think it really holds up, and I'm excited to keep playing it. Yeah, so that's where I'm at. I'm going to, like I said, be continuing playing this over on my podcast, and I will check back in with y'all in about a week here to let you know how I'm feeling about Zelda at that point. Thanks.
This has been a presentation
of the We Can Make This Work
Probably Network.
Follow us on Twitter
At Probably Work
For more of our questionable content.
Also, we have a website called probablywork.com.